Christopher, you must have known I needed an injection this morning. Because I most certainly did. And now I feel energized. Thank you, sir. Pardon? Better than coffee. Let's stop it there. Oh. I think I was channeling Dr. Arlene Bump. I was reading a lot of stories on the field about a very well-known legacy practitioner, Ventura Papke. She was Dr. Ernest Holmes' practitioner. And a lot of stories started flooding the minister's listserv, and she was kind of a wild thing. It's very interesting, you know. I always feel that I can bring more of me out when I hear the honor and celebration of these people that impacted the world as messengers of this teaching, when I know that they allow all of themselves to show up.
Spiritually sexy.
Okay, the bushel's coming over here on this section. You can hide your light for the rest of the, for the talk, okay? Boy, I tell you, I'm talking about being cracked open, and when you're cracked open, it's really hard to pull yourself back. Because that's the whole point. It's not to hide. And thank you, it was perfect what you said about, but that's spirit too. And we get that this is, and this is definitely not. Right? When we see world atrocities or tragedies, when we see people who have lost, and we feel the empathy and the compassion for people who have lost their lives, possessions. But what we have to remember is that when we become cracked open, we also lose. We let go of, we release the hold and the grasp we have on what is so precious to us, which do not come in the form of things, but come in the form of thoughts. That's why the flood was a gracious gift from nature. And it is not over, even though the waters have receded. Even though my mind yesterday went, oh my God, are we going to get a second coming? And my other part of my brain said, only if you need it. As I was driving home in thunder and lightning and talking to my mother who was panicking, and and that's it. We panic. We panic because we are grasping on things. Grasping things. On things that really have no meaning within themselves. So to crack open the safe as the first talk title I chose for Abundance Abounds really means not being disconcerted about what our ego or our individual idea or perception of who we are and what life is, not to disregard it or disassociate or separate ourselves from that part within us, because it does great work too. It is all great work being done by means of us. But it's to amp up, it's to bring up, it's to pay more attention than we are paying, to develop this divine, exquisite connection within ourselves to the sacredness of our own divinity. And we are primed. I caught myself saying this week, well, if I ever invest in a property again, it certainly isn't going to be on a floodplain. It's going to be on a mountain. And then I thought, really? And then I thought, it was very interesting to watch the trend, the flow of thought. Well, really, there's nowhere that's safe. Right? There's nowhere that's safe in this physical world because it's always changing. And it's unpredictable. It's nature. It's the nature of things to move and flush and purify everything, to bring it back home to itself and its own truth. So as soon as I said it isn't safe, of course I thought, ooh, that'd be good for cracking the safe open, but this idea of safety, it's where we hide away from life. We hide within ourselves. We hide away from the life that is moving through us. We separate ourselves from the fullness of life because we've decided we can get hurt, or we can have things taken away from us, or we can lose, or whatever it is, we hide. We think we're hiding and keeping safe from the outer world. Not true. Can't possibly be. Because when we are not hiding and we are fully present in the moment, we don't respond or react to life in a way that is unsettling within us. We just see the truth of it and position ourselves accordingly. It's a whole different way of living. So when we're talking about abundance abounds, very rarely do we think of starting from scratch or starting from nothing, no thing. And none of us, as we start aging, like to entertain the thought of starting over. You know that one? Oh my goodness. If I really do this or I follow my bliss, it means I'm going to have to start over again from scratch. Hallelujah. Because you empty out and you release all the other stuff that was getting in the way that you've built up. I watch my mom, and as she aged physically, she feels safe in a structure. I know where that wall is. So if I start leaning or losing my balance, I'm caught. I'm protected. I have to take my pills at this time. And in my mind, I'm going, hey, if you take them 5 minutes early, 5 minutes late, an hour late, don't take them at all, I'm sure you'll still be sitting there in the morning. That's what my mind is saying. But her mind is saying, no, this is what's going to keep me alive. So how have we structured our thinking to keep us alive, functioning, managing, getting by, getting along, when we could let the floodgates open? When we could become the experience of the grace of God, which is fluid, ever present, always available. We don't know. It's like the dark night of the soul. Unless we go into something like that, we never touch into the indestructible capacity that we have. We spend a lot of our time trying to avoid problems and challenges and conflict. Childhood. Let's just make it nice. That's the beginning, I'm convinced, of this is good and this is bad. Let's just not rock the boat, make waves. Funny, all these these metaphors for water. When the fluidity of the essence of life, the fluidity of love, everything, life is spontaneous. But it's like we have this thing like my mom, I was describing and using my mom to describe, is that unless it looks like this, I can't survive. Now, we don't know this consciously, but we've just kind of set it up that way. We set it up that way because we have not fluid ideas of who we are most of the time, unless we decide to have a creative experience. Or we decide to have a learning experience, like we take a program or a course, where we go in saying, I am willing to open up my purview, my perceptions, to let some new possibility into my life. Then we're more in the nature. But of course, when we start to learn things, or we have a new idea that confronts the old idea, like this is what we need to do exactly when that happens, whether we're in a class or whether we're just doing life. We need to allow the new idea and the old idea to come together. Because when the new idea carries with it the nature of all, which is life-giving to us, it will naturally supersede and overpower, if you will, or neutralize the lesser idea, the old thought. You don't have to do anything about that. You just have to keep open to the new idea and allow it to do its work. When we move into the realm of uncertainty, when that happens, when we're open, we're welcoming, we're calling in uncertainty. And when we move into that realm, we greet the wisdom of our soul. So we need to start where we are, right, to crack the safe open. We can't plan that. I mean, even a burglar who goes to crack open a safe has to use spiritual principle. Where am I going with that? I will tell you in a moment. There was a new idea, and my old idea of what I'm supposed to be saying just pushed up against it. So there you are. Now, you think I just made that up, but I just used it as an example of what I previously said. I actually have it written down. Because okay, so here we go. But before I share that with you, I had a lot of I got some email that said, "Why are these questions? These are the questions that never can be answered in life." I don't know if you ever had that email, but it was in my old drafts, so I pulled up some of them. And one is, why do banks charge a fee on insufficient funds when they know there's no money to cover it? Have you ever wondered that? Which I thought was a great lead-in to the burglar analogy. So a burglar who is intending to crack open a safe for the goodies, okay, now we've already established the capacity and the magnificence within us, the infinite intelligence and creativity. Okay, so those are the goodies. So keep up with this. Hopefully it'll make sense. So a burglar intending to crack open a safe for the goodies guarded within must first release all ideas of what could go wrong. What has gone before? Could have been a botched last job, right? So that's kind of like meditation. It's kind of like emptying mind, which is one of the spiritual practices that we use to open up and awaken to the inner mystic. The burglar has to plan, see the outcome, strategize, visualize that end result, and keep his or her eye on the open safe. To see the door open, to see it. To see no obstruction to the gold or the treasure. Whereupon feeling the weight of that precious, valuable gold or whatever it is, treasure, in their hands. And this is akin to spiritual mind treatment. Once successful, the burglar must sustain his vision and remain aware and awake at every step that ensues during the getaway, so as not to trip himself up. Now that's another spiritual practice. It's called practicing the presence. During the planning, actuating, the event, during the getaway, and the final resting place, ! The burglar remains detached, objective, and non-judgmental. Poised, in fact, gleaning possibilities and expanded perspective throughout. This is the spiritual practice known as a witnessing consciousness. In order to pull off something, in order to move into that place of our own magnificence and not just awaken to the fact that it exists, but actually live experienced from that mystical place within us, we need to prepare the table. We need to prepare the way. You know, Joel Goldsmith, who is a highly regarded mystic, was one of the teachers of Dr. Ernest Holmes. In fact, we're using his book right now in the course I'm teaching, The Path of Loneliness. And another book of his is being used for practical mysticism. And he talks about this misconception. He relates it back to paganism, when whatever in nature seemed to bring us our good or protect us or guide us, they made a deity out of that. They praised and worshipped, they gave thanks to that thing. And throughout time, this idea of whatever is working for us or is helping us or guiding us becomes this God-like idea, where we turn and we give over, we recognize that, we praise it. And today, he said, even in this teaching, even in the mystical teaching, the teachings of New Thought, or metaphysics rather, we look at God as law, as karmic law, as cause and effect. We do teach that in metaphysics. But when we think of this God or this infinite power or presence only as that through which our use of and application of brings us our good, we've missed that mystical connection. Because Joel talks about God as grace. Joel talks about God, or this infinite mind, as so much more than just a means or a functioning through which we can get something that we want. Right? And as we walk in the spiritual teaching, we come to a place and a point where we realize that there's nothing that we need, really. I mean, it's all fun and it's amusing, and some things we prefer, some things we don't. Some things delight us, some things tickle us, some things scare us, some things push us, some things challenge us, all to what end? Knowing through our experience the truth, the illumination of our own soul and spirit. So when we talk about cracking open the safe, what I think we're really doing is letting go our mental constructs, which really is what this teaching leads us to do at every turn. And it's opening to the love that we are. When we're loving, when we're being love, there is no obstruction. We can see clearly. We are always possibility thinkers when we're loving. When our mind gets involved in the act and the expression and the experience of love, we start moving back. Because, unlike the burglar who successfully robbed the bank, we start thinking about everything that can go wrong, and we start moving back into ourselves and hiding because we don't want to be hurt. But unless we open to the possibility of being hurt, which really is just feeling, it's really nothing else until our mind gets in and tells us it's not good. It's just feeling hurt. It's like feeling happy. It's like feeling mad. But we have put different energy on these different experiences, these different feeling experiences. But without allowing ourselves to feel hurt, what are we doing? When we walk in this world and hide aspects of us that we don't like, that we have energy on, that we have bad memories of having felt before, and all those associations with it, we take with us, or we hide all the good stuff. I mean, all the great stuff. We hide all experience, the possibility of knowing the grace of God, of being the grace of God by means of us, because we can't shut part of ourselves off, because God is everything. Life is everything. The nature of life is whole, as are we. And when we start sectioning ourselves in our own mind and hiding certain parts, then we miss the good stuff. All that stuff that we pray about, that we dream about. It's like we're our own antibiotic. Right? We administer to ourselves this antibiotic by virtue of how we choose to think, so that we can shut down part of ourselves. But the thing is, when we shut down anything, we shut down everything. So it's something to always remember. So I have another question, which is kind of fun. Actually, it's not in here. I wasn't going to say it, but I think it's so funny that I can't get it out of my mind. Who was the first person that looked at a cow, and said, I am going to squeeze those long pink things and drink the first thing that comes out of it? I mean, do you think the person, you probably think that's the person is cracked who thought of that first, but look what happened from that. Look at the greater good. It's called interrelationship, interdependence. Everything lives, moves, and has its being to the highest good of everything else. That's the nature of life. But someone had to have a crazy idea and do it first. You know? How many crazy ideas have you had that have brought you an expanded experience of yourself and life, that actually have affirmed and reinforced the capacity that lives within you? Cracking open the safe is really letting go of the idea that you need to be safe from anything. There is nothing outside of yourself but your own projection. So virtually you're hiding from yourself. Right? I got an email this week from somebody who is really trying to position themselves in a much bigger way, but is falling back into the old thoughts of I am not enough. They're in an education program in which their fellow students are talking about all these magnificent accomplishments, to the point where my friend can't even wrap their mind around what their own magnificence is, because it's so outweighed by what they're hearing and what they're imaging. And it creates that place of moving back, because I have nothing of equal value. Here we are again, focusing on who we are by measure in the physical world, rather than moving into that place of that inner mystic, which knows no bounds, which can't possibly not deliver its own nature in all things. And so, of course, once again, we're focused somewhere else. We're focused on the outer and not the inner. What's the speed of darkness? Another question that man cannot answer. We'd like it to be short, right? What if you were to open to it being as long as it needs to be? Where would you go? What would the resources be? You would go inside. We go inside, we look in times like that, because there's nothing else we can do. When we move into darkness, I'm not talking about spiritual practice. I'm talking about darkness, which actually can be a spiritual practice if you choose it to be that. It's like we retreat into a place that allows us to see ourselves and all of life differently. For me, my own personal experience is that I'm not as functional in the outer world. I don't sometimes know how to put words together or thoughts together. Or my body just isn't as energized, or, and all these things start creeping into this beautiful space my soul is called forward, so that I can create a sense of humility and a deeper sense of reality, of the truth of who I am, because I become my own resource. I, meaning the I am. Not me, my ego self, the I am. I figured out a long time ago that the reason I got ill like physically sick, was so that I could have time alone with me, with my God, with that God of my understanding. When I started to understand that I could have that time and I could create that for myself everywhere, that I could practice the presence everywhere, that I could see the truth everywhere, as these teachings have helped me to be able to do, physically, less and less ill. I didn't need it anymore. It's not that I don't need it sometimes, because I forget, right? But as soon as it happens, I go, whoa, wait. I have not been tending myself. I have not been doing my inner spiritual work. Now, that doesn't have to look like anything. I thought I was going to fail ministerial orals because they said to me, do you meditate? You know, they're all sitting there beautifully, like, just like I pictured spiritual, intelligent, wise people would be. They sat there. I thought, did I walk into a poker game? Did someone die? That's not to frighten you ministerial students that are coming up to the pen. Life has changed a million times. Anyway, they said, one of the last, I thought, oh, I'm doing pretty good. And then at the very last thing they said, do you meditate? And I thought, oh, darn it. Busted. Because I thought meditation had to look like this. And I said, yes, but not in the traditional sense. And they said, and they kind of looked at each other and said, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, what is meditation? Right then they knew I was a minister. What is meditation? I asked the panel people, right? Because I wanted to know what they were thinking, so I could give the right answer, right? What is meditation? I said. And they said, well, of course, it's a place where you empty mind, where you are still, where you go within. And I said, oh, of course I meditate. I do that when I'm clowning, when I'm chanting, when I'm miming, when I'm having a hot bath, right? But I didn't think it was the right way, the acceptable way, the way that they were looking for, right? It kept me away from listening to my own soul. I was starting to pull my soul back and pull my intellect out and let that run ahead of me to make the way. Why? To be safe. Because I thought safe was getting my license, being accepted, acing the achievement. It was all about image. I never related ministry to a deeper calling of my soul, ever, when I got into ministry. The short version in conversation was, it was a fluke, really, until I started my own center. And then I knew exactly why I was where I was, and it was perfect. I listened to a lot of ministers who never really intended this path and wished I could have been that kind of minister that said, from a child, I wanted to serve God. That was never in my mind. Ever in my mind. I didn't even know what I thought about God. Why? Because I wasn't connected with myself. I lived through my intellect. I lived creating my survival through being safe. That's why I'm a minister. Was so that I could go deeper within the truth of who I was through these spiritual teachings. And as I lived my life and did my journey, I could share basically with my words, with my presence, with my love, with my vision for community, what it was I was learning. So the mystic heart, the awakening, that inner mystic, will crack open the safe. You'll be letting go right, left, and sideways. Sometimes you'll be kicking and screaming doing it. Other times you'll say, bless you, I know it's time that you're gone. Right? But I think, and I'm going to come right back to what Connie said again to conclude, I think the best idea that we can hold about awakening this inner mystic, right where we are, is by knowing that everything is spirit. Outside. And the only way you're going to know that is because you practice and prepare the way constantly for allowing the wholeness and the truth and the beauty and the perfection of your own true nature to shine, to come out of hiding, to be what it is, because it truly is, as are you, all God. Abundance abounds, right here, right now, and so it is.
So it is.
Thank you.